Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 419 and my guest is Pete Best. Pete is the original Beatles drummer. He's the co-proprietor of the Casbah Coffee Club Suites in the historic and holy grail home of where the Beatles really began. Pete's mom, Mona, purchased the home when Pete was young, and the rest, as they say, is history. Pete's also the co-founder of the Liverpool Beatles Museum, and in 1988, he founded the Pete Best Band that is touring today. He's a songwriter, promoter, manager, and author. We talked about his beloved mother, Mona, his childhood in the bombed-out Liverpool post-World War II, his time with the Beatles, his time after the Beatles, and what he has done with a life well lived. Really interesting, sweet guy. I love chatting with him. Just a lovely, lovely human being. So I'm excited for you to hear this. General stuff, Hey Human Podcast is now on YouTube under Official Susan Ruth. So that would be youtube.com/Official Susan Ruth. I'm on Patreon at Susan Ruthism. It helps keep the show ad-free. Please sign up for Patreon. I'm on TikTok at Susan Ruthism. I'm not going to post there a whole lot, but here and there I will make videos for TikTok. It's a lot. I always think, do I really have anything to say that will add to this TikTok experience for other people? And most of the time I come up with the no. I don't have anything interesting to say, but it's there regardless. You can check out heyhumanpodcast.com for links and to learn more about my guests and the show. Check out susanruth.com to learn more about me and my other artistic endeavors, and follow Susan Ruthism and Hey Human Podcast on social media. You can find my music on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever you get your music, under Susan Ruth. And please rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Lots and lots of podcast places these days. Thank you for listening. Be well, be kind, be love. Here we go. Pete Best, welcome to Hey Human.
Pleasure being here, Susan. Pleasure being here.
It's so lovely to see you.
And you as well, yeah.
I start every episode the same way. I ask people to talk about where they're from and what their childhood was like, what shaped them as a person. Let's start there.
Well, for those of you who don't know, I was born in India from a English family, military family, which had been stationed out in India since the time of the war. I was born in 1941, 24th of November. So I'm a war baby. Born in Madras, which I now believe is Chennai in India. And came to Liverpool in 1945 because my father was from Liverpool, from the famous boxing family, the best. Been in Liverpool ever since 1945. Spent my childhood in Liverpool, education in Liverpool. Went to high school in Liverpool, played rugby in Liverpool, sport, the usual stuff. I suppose what shaped my life was that my mother opened a club called the Casbah, which was in the cellars of this wonderful Victorian mansion, which she bought. And there's a quaint little story about that, Susan. She bought it because she always wanted, we moved around Liverpool. For those of you who don't know Liverpool was blitzed very badly during the war. And in 1945, when we came, there was a lot of war damage, a lot of blitzing, deprivation and, destitution. Housing in Liverpool at that time was very scarce. So for a period in Liverpool, we moved around Liverpool. We started off in town centre in a flat above a pub in Casey Street, which is still there today. The pub's still there. I still go and have a pint now and again. And then we moved from there because the flat was haunted. We found out the flat was haunted.
Haunted by whom? Do you know?
The previous owner. Yeah, it had been an old man. And apparently, so the landlady said, Ma Edgerton, okay, she basically turned around and said, because of the circumstances he died and the fact that he allegedly he wasn't found for a couple of days. So because he wasn't found for a couple of days, the story goes that he's a restless spirit which haunts the previous property. That was the restless spirit that we encountered. So Mother Mo basically turned around and said, I'm not, stick that one, I'm not staying here with the restless spirit. So we moved on and we moved to a housing estate on the outskirts of Liverpool. And then we eventually ended up in rural Liverpool, which is West Derby Village. And my brother was coming home from school one day and passed the destitute building in Hayman's Green. And went and told my mother Mo and said, there's a fantastic house which is up for sale. And she went and looked at it and she fell in love with it, even though in those days I nicknamed it Dracula's Castle. Okay, it was that run down and overgrown and everything. But she transformed it into this incredible Shangri-La. But what happened was, the funny thing was, she went and saw my father, Dad, John, was my stepfather, John. And turned around and said, seen this wonderful house. Would you be interested in buying it? Let's move, let's upgrade property. And he went, no, it's a big white elephant. He said, I'm not interested in doing it. She didn't tell anyone, typical of Mona. And she went and pawned all her jewellery, right, and betted on a horse called Never Say Die, which was running in the 1954 Derby, okay, which is a big race over here in England. And it was an American horse being ridden by a novice jockey called Lester Piggott, who went on to become world champion jockey. And it was a rank outsider, and the price was 33-1. Okay. Now she pawned all her jewelry, betted on this horse. Horse was called Never Say Die. So we had a situation. We're sitting there watching the Derby run, and Mo's normally a cool, calm, placid person, very patient and, low-key.
Yeah, and just for clarification, Mo is Mona, your mother.
That's correct.
For people that don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, we affectionately call her Mo, but her full name's Mona. But Mo, the multitude of people that see me, you only had to mention Mo. It's like, yeah, we know Mona. So we're sitting there watching the Derby, Susan, and we could tell that Mo was very intent and Never Say Die's coming up on the rails, and we see it going in front and going in front and going in front. And it won, okay. And Mona, whatever we're going to call her, she went from this cool, calm, placid person watching the Derby with great intent to the screaming banshee running around the kitchen going, I've won my house. And with the money from that, she bought Hayman's Green, and she became the first woman in England to acquire a mortgage.
That's a huge deal.
Wow, that was something which was unheard of in those days. But she did it. And then we actually moved in around about 1956, 57 into the property. And ever since then, people will know that the family motto is Never Say Die. Okay, it stayed with us. And it'll stay with us for future generations. Okay, it's inbound because of Mo. We had cellars underneath the house. And Mo was sitting there watching a programme one day. And it was about the Two Eyes Coffee Club in London, which spawned all the English rock and rollers, Cliff Richard, Wee Willie Russell, the Shadows, people like that, Tony Sheridan. And I was sitting there and she went, Pete, we've got cellars underneath the house, haven't we? And I turned around and said, yes. And she went, what do you think about the idea of turning it into a coffee club? So I turned around and said, sounds fantastic. So she went, yeah, I think we'll do that. So I said, who's going to do it, Mo? So she said, you are. Okay, so that was the challenge. And for the next 6 months, Susan, we had the back garden. For those of you who don't know Hayman's Green, it's an old Victorian mansion, 1860, stands in an acre of ground, okay, detached property. And for the next 6 months, the back garden was like a building site. There was concrete tippers going there, timber tippers going in there, cement, sand, timber, cable, you name it. It was a building site. But eventually we got it completed. So the next thing was, Mo needed a band to open the club. She was going to call it the Casbah, Eastern influence again. And she had this image of the Casbah being a place where the kids of Liverpool could listen to music. Okay. So the war cry became, come to the Casbah, which allegedly is the famous Charles Boyer expression he used. Whether it was Charles Boyer said or not, it was immaterial, because basically what happened was every kid who came to the Casbah, come to the Casbah. That was the war cry that was out there. The band which should have opened it was the Leicester Quartet. And two of the members of that band came down and saw my mother Mona one day and turned around and said, a couple of weeks before opening day, actually, okay, because the opening night was 29th of August, 1959. And they basically turned around and said, no, we got bad news for you, right? The band is broken up. And Mo was actually distraught. She turned around and said, my God, what's going to happen? I need a band. We're opening in a fortnight. So George basically turned around and went, I happen to know a couple of guys who aren't doing anything, Mo. And it's going to be a residency, and I'll go and have a word with them. And off he went. He came down the next day. They turned out to be John Lennon and Paul McCartney, right?
And that was George Harrison.
That was George Harrison, yeah.
Yeah.
They came down and saw my mother Mo. Mo put the deal to them. She was going to pay them £3 a night, okay. No drummer, okay. There was John, George, Paul, and Ken Brown, right? And it was a residency. It was like gold. So they realised that there was a bit of painting to be done. The club still wanted to be decorated. And I'm certain lots of your listeners may have actually already been to the Casbah, so they know what we're talking about. But for those of you who haven't, I'll explain that the Casbah still stands in its total originality, right? And because of their involvement, John Lennon painted the Aztec ceiling, which is still in the Casbah today, okay? McCartney painted the rainbow ceiling, which is still in the Casbah today. George painted the salmon ceiling, still the same in the Casbah today. I painted a spider's web in the band room, still in the Casbah today. Mona commissioned Cynthia Lennon to paint John Lennon over the fireplace in the coffee bar area. That's still there today. And all the stars, which basically it's the holy grail of the Beatles trail. It's like stepping back in time. Okay, it's like going back in time to a 1959-60 coffee club with music. But the incredible thing was the stars which everyone painted, John, George, Paul, Cynthia, Stu Sutcliffe, Ken Brown, me, it goes on and on and on and on. We got them valued about 10 years ago, Roag and I. 10 years ago, I think each star, which is on the ceiling in the coffee bar area, Sotheby's valued it at £2,500 a star, right? Now there's something like about close to 200 stars on the ceiling. So it's pretty valuable, that little ceiling up there, along with all the other attributes. But the great thing about it is, you know, the club stands in its total originality. What we've done today, just to bring your listeners back up to running speed with the project that we're involved in, right? We've converted this wonderful Victorian mansion into what we call the Casbah Coffee Club Suites. And there's 5 suites, the Lennon Suite, the McCartney Suite, Harrison Suite, Sutcliffe Suite, and of course the best suite, right? But it's unique, Susan, in as much as that it's where the Beatles played. It's where the Beatles slept. It's where the Beatles partied. It was their home away from home. We've gone Airbnb with it. We opened officially August 1, which was a couple of days ago. Eligible to be booked through Airbnb. So people go on Casbah Coffee Club website. Book yourselves in. Come and enjoy a unique experience, you know.
The building stayed in the family and it's now protected. It's a heritage home, right?
It is, yeah. We have got we're a Grade 2 listed building, heritage status. Yes,
That's fabulous. I want to
absolutely.
go back to your childhood, and I'm curious, when you move to some place that has seen the worst of things, when it is so demolished, as a little kid, are you looking around thinking, this means I can build it from the ground up myself? Or was there a sense of, oh, it's wrecked and I don't know what to do here? Did it inspire the kids your age?
I think I was inspired simply because of the fact of, I suppose, landing in Liverpool Christmas Eve 1945, cold, dark, wintry morning, seeing the deprivation which had gone on, but seeing that even at that young age, and I don't think I realised it at that time because I was only about 4, nearly 5. But as I grew older in Liverpool, I suddenly realised that the people of Liverpool have got this incredible spirit, which is pure optimism. They're never defeated. And I'd come from a strong family where that's the essence of your backbone, so it fitted well that the people of Liverpool, had strong backbones. My family had got a strong backbone as well, so it seemed to merge, it was like, fine, this is the place for us. But as Liverpool emerged, and as Liverpool transpired, I think I grew with Liverpool as well. We saw the changes happen. It was inspiration to see the changes happening. It was nice to be part of it. And, consequently, as a result of that, the musical business, which has been there long before I ever strutted the boards, right? There's a musical heritage which went on long before I ever came, before the Beatles ever came alive, which was going back to jazz bands, Trinidad, steel drum bands, all that kind of stuff, jazz bands, you name it, emanated out of Liverpool. We had it. But yeah, very inspirational. And, it's still very inspirational even today, because Liverpool from 1945 to Liverpool 2024 is so different. And it's actually been incredible to be part of that particular journey and see the changes.
Yeah.
And see how Liverpool is vibrant now. And the Casbah Coffee Club Suites is part of that.
Your mom, being inspired like that, she was certainly ahead of her time, it sounds like. And the fact that she saw a need for kids, which historically are ignored, the fact that she saw that there was something to do so that kids felt safe and welcome is humongous.
Yeah, well, if you knew Mona, she's a humongous character. Okay. They broke the mold when Mo came along and when she disappeared, right? But she's still up there looking after us, so God bless you, Mo. Yeah, she had a humongous character. She had a mission. She wasn't satisfied with just opening a coffee club and calling it the Casbah. She had a dream. She wanted to see kids. She wanted to bring music to the kids of Liverpool. And that's what she did. Because through her perseverance and determination and other resources, what a resilient woman, that foresight and her dreams, she did that. And the Casbah Coffee Club became the catalyst for the Merseybeat sound. And, Roag and I have so aptly turned around and said the media at that time, many, many years ago, named her the mother of Merseybeat. And that couldn't have been given to a more apt person,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, humongous character, yeah.
Before you started playing drums, I read that she got you a drum kit, but before you picked up the drums, had you an aptitude for music? Were you interested in that?
Like most kids in Liverpool, when the skiffle group came along, skiffle craze and Elvis Presley, I ran out and bought a cheap guitar and stood in front of the mirror and shook my hips, and, all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't meant to be. It didn't seem quite right for me anyway. I was more apt to, banging my fingers on the table, pots and pans. So when the opportunity came along to actually start the band, the Blackjacks, which is what I did, it seemed appropriate that I would end up being the drummer. Seemed logical, so that's how I ended up being a drummer.
What did you like about it?
I don't know. I suppose the fact that I'm sitting at the back and pounding out a rhythm, energetic. I can be as loud and as savage as I want to be, or I can be as quiet and as mellow as I want to be.
It's funny, I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and we were talking about different band members and what they represent in the band. I grew up doing music as well and having bands. And for me, I was always drawn to the drummer. And he said, "Why is that?" And I said, "You get the sense of the drummer that he can do a lot of things at once, if you know what I mean."
That leaves a lot to the imagination, Susan. Yeah, we are multi-talented. Yeah, we are, most probably know, drummers are multi-talented. Yeah, no,
Yes. Tell me about your friendships that were developing at that time. So you were friends with George Harrison. You were friends with John and Paul too, or is that when they came to play that you met them, and were you already buddies?
No, I'd seen George playing at a club called Lowlands, where the Les Stewart Quartet emanated from. But of course, they broke up, and then when they actually started playing at the Casbah in 1959 as the Quarrymen, because Mo asked John what name he wanted to be called, and he said, "Well, we used to be called the Quarrymen." So he said, "Oh, that's fine. We call you the Quarrymen." So they were billed as the Quarrymen, no drummer. But that's how I got to know them, because, they helped decorate the club. Wasn't school friends with them. My side of school was different to theirs. Even though they were high school, I was in a different part of Liverpool. Rival schools, if you want to be quite honest about it. And it was very much a case of the friendship developed through the Casbah, because it didn't just become like for lots of kids in Liverpool, and I've got to explain this, you got to sort of try and paint the atmosphere of the Casbah. Okay, it was a meeting place as well for young kids. It was a social occasion where all this wonderful stuff was going on, music and friendship and, romance. You could find it all in the Casbah. And it was very much a case of they enjoyed that atmosphere. They enjoyed being part of that particular embryo. So my friendship with them nurtured through the Casbah. And then they disappeared. They had arguments over money and didn't play the Casbah for a while. But cut a long story short, because of my involvement and the fact that I'd started a band and I was playing drums, they needed a drummer to go to Germany. And I got the phone call from Paul. Which turned around and said, we know you're playing drums. Would you be interested in coming? We are now called the Beatles. Even though when I joined them, we were the Silver Beatles. Okay, for one particular night. And then it was decided on our way out to Hamburg, we're going to drop the silver. And we were the Beatles. Okay, and that stayed with us ever since. But yeah, through that friendship, which nurtured in the Casbah, I became the Beatles drummer. Yeah. I knew them for 3 years because I got to know them in 59, joined them in 60, August 1960, and basically 2 years to the day. So I knew them for 3, played with them for 2 years. My joining them was the first time I joined, which was August 1960. So my period with them was from August 60 to August 62. Okay.
And Germany was really the start of the big climb.
Yeah. I mean, without Hamburg, I think you could put my hand on my heart, and even after the other surviving Beatles, if it hadn't been for Germany, Hamburg, it may never have happened. Because consequently, what happened, Susan, the long hours that we were playing, because we didn't know it when we were going out. We were naive rock and roll musicians, hungry rock and roll musicians from Liverpool. When we got out there, we thought we were going to be playing in the Kaiser Keller. That was the first dream-shattering blow. It was like, you're not playing the Kaiser Keller, you're playing the Indra, which was a grotty little club at the end of the Große Freiheit. And when we went down there was a couple of people arguing over beer prices in there. And Bruno Koschmieder, who was the manager who took us out to Germany, or the promoter who took us out to Germany, I should say, he turned around and said, "I want you to make this into another Kaiser Keller." Right. So we said, "Okay, we're rock and rollers, we're from Liverpool, we can do it." And we turned around and said, "How long are we playing?" And he said, Monday to Friday you will play 6-7 hours a night, 15 minutes off on the hour. Okay.
6 hours?
A night, okay. Monday to Friday, right? Saturday we had to play 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning. And Sunday we had to play 6 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning, right? So you take all those hours that we had to perform. We went from being this mediocre little rock and roll band to being this pulsating, savage, air-blasting, great rock and roll band, which conquered Germany, conquered Hamburg. And of course, when we came back to Liverpool, we just pinned the kids' ears back in Liverpool. We played the Casbah on 19th of December, 1960. That was our first gig in Liverpool. That was the start of Beatlemania. And it started in the Casbah. The funny thing was, I'll tell you a funny story. Mona Builders is the fabulous Beatles die-up from Hamburg. So the place was absolutely heaving. And John, George and Paul were the first to go down. And the kids looked at him and, hang on a minute, that's John, George and Paul. He used to be in the Quarrymen. Who are these Beatles from Hamburg? So lo and behold, right, Chaz, who's standing in for Stu Sutcliffe, who stayed in Germany because he'd fallen in love with Astrid. He followed out a couple of weeks later. Chaz and myself, because Chaz had been in the Blackjacks with me, we're walking down the stairs into the Casbah, and the kids go, that's Chaz and Peter used to be in the Blackjacks. Who the hell are these people? So they all legged it to the back door where Mona was. And they basically turned around and said, Mona, who are the Beatles? And she went, give them a chance. I've heard wonderful things about them, right? I've heard wonderful things. They've just conquered Hamburg, right? And she said, give me. So they all piled back in again. We're standing there. Paul kicks off, does his opening song, Red Sails in the Sunset. And we'd been used to raucous crowds in Hamburg. Right, we played a number at the end of it, yeah, banging on the table, dancing on the table, beer bottles, yeah, Beatles. Silence. And we looked at one another, it was like, what have we done wrong? We've played the wrong notes or something like that, or sung the wrong words. And then this rumble started to, and it emanated, it was like an earthquake, starting it. It was the kids screaming, starting to scream. And I always turn around and say, that particular night, when we played the opening night at the Casbah, the first gig came back again. That was the start of Beatlemania.
Yeah, that's incredible. So there was definitely a sense of you all looking at each other thinking, this is something.
Oh, wow.
You understood that was happening at the time?
I think we saw it. We realized it in Hamburg, because it took us a while. We didn't conquer Hamburg overnight. It took us a couple of weeks, but we eventually dominated Hamburg. We became the best things out of Hamburg, And of course, when we came back to Liverpool, the kids had never seen anything or heard anything like it, right? Because you've got to imagine, the bands in Liverpool are all still in the gold army suits and, white wink pickers and black shirts and all that kind of stuff, typical rock and rollers. And we come back from Hamburg, our hair's down by our shoulders, we got our leather jackets on, we got cowboy boots on, black t-shirts, and it was just like the complete rock and roll image. And the music they were playing and how they played it compared to the way that we were playing music, it was just two total different entities. They were lightweight. We were just blasting out this savage rock and roll. And with the image, the kids in Liverpool were just like, what is this? They'd seen it.
They didn't know it hit them.
They'd seen it on the films, but here's 5 Scousers bringing it back home again and dishing it out to them,
And I imagine all those hours. First of all, I can't believe you all had to play for 6 hours straight, but all those hours, day after day after day, I mean, y'all must have been monsters up there.
Oh, we enjoyed ourselves up there. We let off steam up there. Okay. We drank, we enjoyed ourselves, and we carried that exhibitionism, but I suppose that's the way you could put it. Exhibitionism onto stage. But because of that exhibitionism and the long hours, and we had to get rid of our frustrations and tensions, the stage show grew, the musicianship grew, and it was that package that we brought back. We'd gone out this, mediocre rock and roll band, but we came back with this, frenetic, savage, totally different looking, imagized, rock and roll band that the kids in Liverpool were just like, oh my God, what the hell is happening? So the funny thing was that the next time we played in Liverpool, which was a couple of nights afterwards, the word was out in the street. We were every promoter's dream, right? They were all fighting to book us simply because of the fact you book the Beatles and you get them on your dance hall, the place is going to be heaving, right? So it worked well for us initially, yeah.
Just 2 years, they came to you and said that Ringo Starr was going to take over.
2 years, yeah.
I mean, that's had to have been such a blow. I know it's a long time ago now and certainly well publicized.
Yeah.
But again, having been in bands myself, sort of unceremoniously coming to you and saying, that's it, we're doing this. Did you, at the time, I mean, you've had a long time to think about it, but at the time, for a teenager or a young man, that had to have been devastating.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, when it happened, things were, everything that we were doing was a move in the right direction. We'd conquered Hamburg, we come back, we conquered Liverpool. We'd gone back to Hamburg, we played a better club, we could play with Tony Sheridan, we got a German recording contract, Polydor, unheard of for Liverpool guys to do that. Had a record house, like Bonnie, which opened the doors for so many things. Ended up with a manager, Brian Epstein. So everything was moving along, this little dream that we had of being the toppermost of the poppermost, it was going in the right direction. So when the dismissal came in August, August 62, mid-August 62, 14th to 15th or something like that, that was the last thing on my mind. That was the last thing I was expecting. We'd been turned down by Decca, which was a little bit of a kick in the teeth for us. But then we found out the reason for it. Mike Smith had signed Brian Poole at Tremolos because they were a local band and he was friends with them. It made sense, even though we were the better band, right? But, Brian persevered, we persevered. We went back, we opened a Star Club in Hamburg in April 62. While we were there, we got a telegram from Brian turning around and saying, you guys have got a recording contract with EMI, Parlophone division. Get your stuff ready, you're going into the studio 6th of June 1962, which is what we did. That was like, wow, it's happening, all of the things are starting to come to fruition. We're going to have an English release and possibly that will go into the charts and, you start pipe dreaming. As you so rightly turned around and said, it didn't work out that way for me. It wasn't meant to be. My karma wasn't cast in that right direction. And, I was called into Brian's office. I played the cabin the night before. And as you turn around and say, it's been well chronicled, what the dismissal was about and the conspiracy theories over the dismissal and the reasons for it. I'll most probably go on too long after I've left the planet. There'll still be people out there still trying to decide what the definitive reason was, I wish them good luck. If they ever find out, let me know,
yeah.
But, yeah, that was it. So it came as a shock, I'll be quite honest. It cost me a lot of heartache and grievances because 1 minute you're being a top dog with the top band in Liverpool and people were, hiya, Pete. And the next day it was like, you're a nobody.
Well, especially with the lineage of the Casbah and then needing you to be the drummer to go to Germany and all these things, to be that cog that's pushing the wheel forward and forward and forward. And then suddenly they're like, oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's like the wheel fell off. somewhere along the line. But okay, it's one of them. It happened. The only thing I can turn around and say about it is that I suppose it turned me from being a naive thinking rock and roller to being a little bit more streetwise, a little bit more realistic about how you're going to lead your life. Okay, and don't be so trustworthy with people, because you never know when they may stab you in the back. I suppose part of life's rich pattern. It's an enlightenment. You either learn from it, you fall from it.
Yeah.
I was fortunate I learned from it. Okay, so, I have no qualms. They happen.
That's the question is, looking back, do you think you would have been able to handle what it became? Do you think it would have fit who you are as a person? Because I don't know that everyone is suited for the things that come with all of that. It's great scrutiny, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, along with the fame and fortune. It's got a lot of negative stuff, right? Do you think you would have been able to handle all that?
I think it's one of those ones, till you're actually in that situation, you wouldn't know. I always looked at it from the fact of whatever came along, whatever curveball, to American expression, was thrown at us, we handled it. So it was like, well, fine, if that's, we've got to make sacrifices, that comes with fame and fortune. I don't think even they themselves and myself, more so them because they were more directly involved in it, would have realized the degree of fame that they acquired. They rewrote basically music history. They've become music legends. There must probably be year 22,000 or whatever it might be. They'll still be talking about the Beatles. They'll be part of, musical history, about folklore, I don't think they themselves realized at that stage how big they would become. No one realized that. Okay, I mean, they were pipe dreams. Our dreams were be quite honest, getting a record to number one in the English charts. And that to us was there. We made it. We're there. We've got a record. We're top of the dogs, right? My God, what happened afterwards? No one in their right mind would have thought about that. But going back to what you turned around and said, they weren't aware of it at the time. But with the fame and fortune they achieved, there comes a lot of heartache and a loss of personal life. Your personal life suffers. I'd like to think that I would have been able to persevere with that because I persevered with everything else. And I've, persevered and overcome the biggest obstacle in my life, which is getting booted out of the band, which went on to become the biggest thing in show business. So I'd like to think that, possibly a little, a few problems like that I would have been able to handle. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Did you keep doing music long after? I know you do music still to this day, but did you take a time away? Did you step down and say, oh my God, that has devastated me and I'm going to walk away for a minute?
Not initially, no. It went the other way, to be quite honest, even though I did in 68 give up music, but there was a reason for it. I think because of what had happened, it would have been easy for me to basically turn around and say, easy for me to turn around and go, I'm packing it in. I've had enough of this, it's not for me. It worked the opposite with me, right? When I got back home and sort of logically gone through things, and it's like, hang on a minute, just because this has happened, you can't just give in, right? So there's got to be another side, there's got to be a projection of it. And I think it worked the other side. It made me more determined because I had to go out and reinvent myself again. I had to prove to people again because of what had happened and the stigmas that were flying around. I had to go out and basically prove to people, it's like, hang on a minute. Yeah, I am a good musician. I do play the drums. I have got a good band, right? I have got a recording contract. I'm up there with them, right? It was just I was up there with them, but I couldn't keep the same pace going. They were too fast for me.
What did your mom think of all of this happening?
She was a little set back. She was upset by circumstances. The kind of expression she used when she was on a TV interview I'm trying to remember her exact words. I think they went to the effect of, it could have been handled better. I think that was the way she expressed it. And I suppose that sums it up in a teacup. So, it could have been handled better. The way it was handled, when you look back, most probably not the best. But when you look back, thoughts about it I've had many years to think about it. And every now and again, I flash back to them. And you've got to put themselves in their position as well. And I'm trying to cover up for them a little bit here. Okay. It's like, even though George Martin's words had been twisted, he never turned around and said, I'm going to use a session drummer because Pete's crap. It was like, I'm using the session drummer because it's more economical. Pete's sound is too big. So we get it under wraps again. Okay, whatever context that got taken out of, that moment in time, they may have thought to themselves, oh my God, I'm going to use session drummers. We're in danger of losing a recording contract again. Okay, so how do we alleviate that? Get rid of Pete. That seems to be where the problem is. They haven't turned around and said about using session musicians for the others. It's just a session drummer.
And it's not uncommon for session drummers to be different than the band's drummers. That happens a lot on recordings.
No, Martin made that quite clear. He turned around and said, no one was more surprised when we got in touch with him months afterwards. And he turned around and said, no one was more surprised than I was when Ringo landed up. He said, I was fully expecting Pete. He said, but the fact that Ringo landed up, he said, I listened to Ringo, and he said, I still came up with the same logic. I'm still going to use Andy White, the session drummer. But what he did turn around and say, it was common practice in those days, right? Lots of other bands use session drummers. Okay, nothing was mentioned about the fact that a session drummer was being used. What physically happened on stage live didn't make any difference.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And do you stay in touch with Paul or Ringo to this day?
I put my hand on my heart and turn around and say no. Okay? Simply because of the fact. Many years ago, I did try to get in touch with them to find out their own personal views as regards what had happened. Okay. But it became very apparent they didn't want to talk to me. And when people don't, pick up the phone, or they make excuses, they're not in town, or, he's not available, this, that, and the other. And Brian Epstein was the same. Okay, it wasn't just them. Because I did try to, get into Brian a little bit more and find out what had happened, but all of a sudden he became unavailable. So life drifts on. You drift further and further apart. I've always turned around and said, I've got no qualms at all about meeting Paul and Ringo. A lot of people think that it's going to be, the fight of the century. It's not. From my point of view, we're all elder statesmen now. So God almighty, 60 years plus have passed under the bridge. We're grandfathers, we got grandchildren.
Of course.
Yeah, but, if we ever get together, let's not talk about the reason why it happened. That's peripheral now. Okay, no. I don't think Paul gives a damn. Ringo's not worried anyway. I've gone past it, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about life. You're having a good time. You got grandkids. What's your family life like? Okay. Yeah. I know if there'll be a bottle of scotch on the table. I mean, supper for you, while we're doing it. But that's the way I look at it, and whether he wants to, if it happens, whether it's a public meeting or whether it's PR orientated, whatever the case might be, whichever way he wants to play it, I'll roll with it. But I've always turned around and said, if it's meant to be, it'll be. That's my karma. That's my outlook on life. Okay, so I'm not losing sleep over it. If it happens, it happens. It'd be nice to happen. If it doesn't, life rolls on. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you kind of a weird question, only because you brought up the ghosts in the house from when you were a kid.
Oh, yeah.
After John passed and then after George passed, did either of them visit you?
Spiritually wise, I think possibly, I mentioned before a restless spirit. That's someone who hasn't come to terms with it. Okay, I suppose not a good way of expressing it, but they were snatched before the end of their natural life. Do you understand what I'm trying to say there? You know, John was murdered by this idiot Chapman, and George was taken from us by this horrible C word, right? So they're unnatural in a way, but maybe it left them not being restless, you know, or a reason to go back and visit. You know, they might have come back and visited me. They may have gone and visited Paul. They may have gone and Ringo. I don't know.
Or the Casbah, maybe.
Oh, the Casbah, yeah. But no, I wasn't visited by them. But I don't think I'd have been frightened. I'm not frightened of ghosts. So if it did happen or it happens, or I do get a visitation, I'll let you know.
Please, I would be curious. I'm glad that you were compensated later on with the anthology one. That's good. I mean, because I think for a lot of people that hear your story, it's hard not to take it personally for anyone that's been in a situation that is likened to that. Not on that scale. I mean, you can't touch what that scale is. But to know that you got compensated in some way at some point, that's a good thing.
Yeah, to me it was like, because for those of you who don't know, there were numerous projects that I thought that I may have been included in. Okay, the BBC tapes and all the other stuff. So when the anthology was leaked that it was going to come out, there was a possibility. I just thought, well, if they make an approach, they make an approach. You know, if I'm on it, I'm on it. If I'm not on it, I'm not on it. And I got a phone call from Neil, who was in charge of Apple at the time. And he basically turned around and said, Peter, considering some of the tracks, you know, would you be interested? So I turned around, got no problem with that. So I said, okay. He said, we'll keep you informed. As history turns out now, you know, it being from 1 or 2 tracks to, I think it ended up being 10 tracks on Anthology 1 out of 60. So once it got to that stage, then it was like, okay, Mr. Lawyer, you take care of it. And that's how they sorted it all out. And
yeah.
A lot of people, because there was money involved in it, think that, okay, that must have been the restitution for Pete. That's like he's received some gratification. So, you know, he's got a little bit of payback, so that make him a happy man, right? What they don't realize, prior to that, I was already a happy man. I was already comfortable by my own endeavors. So don't get me wrong, right? And the public, don't get me wrong. Okay, you know, I'm not turning around and saying, you know, don't give me money, right? It's fine. I work hard for it. I'll take it. But it was a little bit like icing on the cake. From my point of view, I looked at it. It's fine, icing on the cake, because I could have been on 1 track. I was on 10 tracks. So I'd like to think that was a little bit of payback to show how important you were during that period.
Absolutely.
There you go.
What did you do then for your life? What was your life's work?
68, I opted out of show business. I turned around and said that was my, you know, I had to prove to people. By then I was married. I fallen in love with a lovely Liverpool girl, Kathy, and I've been married to her for 61 years.
Congrats.
Other than that, yeah. Family man, that's the other side of the coin. You know, I'm a musician on one side. Different hats I wear, you know. Casbah Coffee Club Suites owner, Liverpool Beatles Museum owner, you know, Pete's band, recording. Oh, it goes on and on. But, you know, you're in the field, you know it yourself without me going on about it. So it's very much a case of 68, by this time I was married, and I made a conscious decision. I'm going to bring my family up, you know. I had a responsibility. I've always turned around and said if it had been a single guy, no strings attached, most probably I'd have been hammering on. But I didn't. I got halted in my tracks, and, you know, I'm very pleased to turn around and say that, you know, up till 1988, I became a regular guy. And then in 1988, I did a one-off concert in Liverpool. After a great deal of persuasion, they'd been after me for many years to do this particular concert, which was a Beatle conference in Liverpool, the big Liverpool Beatles conference. And I agreed, but I turned around and said, I'll do it with the way I want to do it. And I just turned around and said, I'll get some good old mates from the old days, and we play some rock and roll. And I did. And I got my younger brother, Roag, to throw his drum kit on stage with me. So my mother was still alive then, so she could see the youngest and the eldest son, who were both drummers, playing on stage at the same time.
Beautiful.
Thought it was going to be a one-off. So I got hold of Billy Kinsey, Kenny Parry, Dave Goldie, great rockers from way back. And we just got up on stage and blasted off some great rock and roll. It went down a storm. And my mother came up afterwards, she turned around and said, she had a little glint in her eye, and she went, Pete, said, you don't know, but you're going to go back into show business. And I turned around and said, nah, it was only going to be a one-off. My God, how right she was. So because since 1988, I've been treading the boards again and enjoying every moment of it. You know, I've got a great band, which has just finished doing a couple of dates in the States. And we're looking forward to going back again. You know, so.
I love that. That's always lived in you.
We had a ball, right? Crowds were great. We made a lot of new friends. They loved the stuff we were playing. It was lovely. You know, it gave us a great boost. You know, great reports, great feedback from the gigs as well. So.
That's great. Let's talk about the suites. What was the decision to do that?
Yeah, we've had it. We wanted to develop the image of Mo, this humongous character, right? And give her the gratitude and the thanks that she always so readily deserved. Roag and I have had this idea in the back of our minds to change Hayman's Green into a Beatle-orientated hotel. And don't get me wrong, so I don't want it to be like a Beatles shrine, whereby you go in every room, there's a picture there and a picture there, and, you know, it's like you swallowed up by Beatlemania all around it. It's unique, and this is why I keep using that word unique. We decided that the house above the Casbah, because the Beatles played in the Casbah, they rehearsed in the Casbah, okay. But they partied, they slept, they played, they rehearsed in the rooms above. So we've converted them into 5 suites, Casbah Coffee Club Suites, the Lennon Suite, McCartney Suite, Harrison Suite, Sutcliffe Suite, and of course the best suite, right? And they're all synonymous with the characters. But the uniqueness about it is the people who were open now, become public. August 1 a couple of days ago. Public launch is going to be the 21st of August. But we are open, open via Airbnb. So people want to go Airbnb and check out Casbah Coffee Club Suites. They'll see the suites, gorgeously designed. Book in, come over and see us, right? And come and join us. The unique worldwide opportunity to come and stay where the Beatles slept, played, and partied. And you better be there as well. You better be there.
I'm gonna come. I'm coming. I'm absolutely. Are you kidding? I'm absolutely coming there. Tell me, is the Casbah underneath? Is it still a venue? Is it still serving coffee and things?
No. There's talk of it. Because with the advent of the Casbah Coffee Club Suites, now we're up and running. Again, another projection that might be okay. It's a great tourist attraction at the present moment. It's bookable only by appointments, you know, because we have to bring a tour guide in. We'll tell them the story of the wonderful Casbah and Mona and, you know, the Beatles and the Quarrymen. But there's talk now because, and it's an idea Roag and I are going to bandy about. Okay. He doesn't know it at the moment. We're going to bandy it about. Possibly where we may start serving coffee down there again. You know, that's tourist attraction. People can come, they can do the tour, they can sit off and have a coffee with us. You know, so we may project that one. We'll take a little bit step further, but I'll keep you informed about that.
Well, my vote is that you open it up and have it happen again, and maybe even utilize the stage and have acoustic sets or something that's more mellow and interesting.
Well, you never know. You see,
you never know.
The venue is there, right? So let's just get this one off the floor. And we'll go back and start thinking about that as a little venue.
Yeah. I'm going to put links on heyhumanpodcast.com so people can find everything really easily. But your website is petebest.com.
Petebest.com is my website. If they go on the Airbnb website for Casbah Coffee Club Suites, even though I mentioned it on my website, it's mentioned on the Liverpool Beatles Museum website as well, which we're involved with.
Tell me about that a minute. The Liverpool Beatles Museum, you run it.
Yeah, it was Roag's brainchild. He had this idea and he had this collection which we've all basically contributed to over the years. But he felt the right location, because it's smack dab in Matthew Street. He couldn't get a better location than that if he tried. Basically facing the cavern, 100 yards down from the cavern. And it was like basically, let the world see the collection, the Beatles collection. And it is a fabulous collection. And there's over 1,000 artifacts in there. It keeps getting updated every couple of weeks. So even if people have been and they come back again, and we hope they come back many, many more times, and to the Casbah Coffee Club Suites as well, okay, it won't be the same. There's always something new in there, so they're not seeing the same thing. There's new memorabilia going in there every day, but it keeps it fresh, keeps it alive. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you have created lots of reasons to go to Liverpool.
That's just 2 of them. Okay. Well, you've got 3 now.
3, yeah.
You've got the Casbah Coffee Club Suites, you've got the Casbah downstairs, you've got the Liverpool Beatles Museum.
That's right.
The little best triangles. There you go.
Pete, you are wonderful. I really appreciate your time and being on the show. This is really an honor for me.
Oh, Sue, been a pleasure talking to you. Okay. And just let me chew the fat with someone. It's been like talking to someone over a cup of coffee. So I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment. Thank you. And thank you for listening, everybody. Bye.
See you soon. God bless. See you in Liverpool.
Yes. 100% yes. Have a great night. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.